beloved. Hi. Last week, which is for me yesterday, I talked to you about submission, how it is sort of essential to the story of Scripture, and how when we submit to the will of God, as in the example of Jonah, good things happen. And sometimes even when we submit, we're not very happy about it. But it isn't because good things don't happen, because they do. And this whole thought about submission came to me when I saw a short little video starring Bertrand Russell. Now, if you don't know Bertrand Russell, there's no big reason why you should, except that Bertrand Russell was not only a Nobel Prize winning winner in literature, he was also a mathematician and a philosopher. And computer science and artificial intelligence, the metaverse, and all of the things that we're talking about is in part due to him. Very bright guy. Anyway, he was interviewed in 1959, before I was born. And he said, he was asked, if you were to put something into a time capsule that would only be discovered 1,000 years from now, what would you put in it that you'd like for people to remember? And he said, well, there are two things. One is intellectual and one is moral. And the intellectual statement that he wants people 1,000 years from now to remember is this, and I quote, when you are studying any matter or considering any philosophy, ask yourself only what are the facts and what is the truth that the facts bear out. Never let yourself be diverted either by what you wish to believe or by what you think would be a beneficial effect if it were to be believed, but only and solely look at what are the facts. So 1 and 1 is 2. That's a fact, right? And they also exist in nature, although 1 and 1 are abstract concepts, but they represent pretty closely what happens in nature. There are two things here. Put them together, I have 2. 1 and 1 is 2. That's a fact. The other thing was moral. And what he said here was, love is wise, hatred is foolish. In this world, we are getting more and more interconnected. Remember, this is 1959. And imagine, I think you can, how much more interconnected we all are. How much more dependent we are upon one another, and how much more we have access to the thoughts of one another. We are far more interconnected than he was in 1959. And what he says about that is that we have to learn to tolerate each other. We have to learn to put up with the fact that some people say things we don't like. We can only live together in that way. But if we are to live together and not die together, we must learn a kind of charity and a kind of tolerance, which is absolutely vital to the continuation of life on this planet. That's 1959. And here we are in 2022. And the fact is that we have the capacity to destroy this planet. And if we do not act in love, we are very likely to do so. And what we are charged to do in Scripture is to submit. Now, the Bible was written over a span of 4,000 years. It had many authors, many hands. It was curated. Some books were chosen and some left out. But whatever the case, it is a piece of art that has a beginning, it has a middle, and an end. It is a coherent narrative. And the themes of that narrative are relationship, partnership, and love. Now, you might say that the Old Testament is largely about submission to God, that our wills, our ways of doing things, and our points of view, and our own idiosyncrasies, and our own baggage, and our own natural selfishness gets us into trouble. And when we turn away from that and turn towards God, which is about love and relationship and connection, we do well. That is the action of Genesis. The action of the New Testament is the story of God's submission to humanity. From beginning to end of the Gospels, each one of them tell the story in different ways. Probably the most succinct, the quickest, the most just the facts, ma'am, of the Gospels is Mark. And Mark begins with Jesus submitting to baptism and submitting to God's authority, and ends practically with the submission unto death and the victory that that submission causes. That is a fact. What I have found is when I make those words action, my life improves. It is not easy. I hold the stone. I used it a few weeks ago to think about those of you without sin, cast the first stone. So there is somebody that you don't like. If there isn't somebody that you don't like, I really want to meet you, because I've never met anyone truly who can say, I've never met a person I didn't like. That is the person that you need to submit to. Now, submission, in this sense, means to love them. And to love them, if they're doing wrong, means that you need to put up boundaries, because they can't be abusive. That doesn't help you, and it doesn't help them. But secondarily, you have to help them find their way to the truth of who they are, to find that spark of humanity that is within everyone. And we can only do that by submitting to the idea that that person has worth, just as you have worth. And that is it. God bless.